Dave Dombrowski and Rob Thomson just said pretty much everything you didn't want them to say in their year-end press conference. Find out why their strategy for this offseason could be a disaster for Phillies fans in today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On Phillies, your number one place for daily, Monday through Friday, Philadelphia Phillies content. So appreciate you joining us. You might know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic, doing sports talk radio here in Philadelphia for over 6 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for the past 4 seasons, and this is now my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. So Rob Thomson and Dave Dombrowski just wrapped up their year-end media availability, looking back at the season, looking forward to the offseason, what needs to change, what will stay the same. All of this was discussed. We are going to get into all of it on today's episode. We're going to start with reaction to Dave Dombrowski, who was at the podium first. Then we're going to talk through what Rob Thomson had to say, who took the podium second. And then we are going to, later on in the episode, talk about where do we go from here with the presumed strategy of the Philadelphia Phillies this offseason. What I'll say right from the jump is this is a approximately 30-minute episode. There is no way in 30 minutes I can properly break down everything that was said and everything that was said that I do not like. But we got a long offseason, so we'll be diving deeper into some of these big storyline answers that we got from Dombrowski and Thomson over the coming days and weeks. So don't expect this to be the last time I talk about this, not one bit. But let's start with Dave Dombrowski. What's what of things that you shouldn't have said after that season ends. First and foremost, he was asked about the coaching staff. He said, not only is Rob Thomson back, which we already knew, we're working on getting an extension done for another year after that. Working on that at some point this winter. We just haven't had the time to get around to it because a lot of stuff has been going on. Hang on. So the guy who was potentially on the hot seat, who you could argue managed you out of multiple games in a 5-game divisional series in the postseason, is now getting an extension? I get it. His winning percentage is sterling, right? If you're going to look at the regular season, more on that in a second, you can argue that Rob Thomson is an incredible manager. Even in some postseason moments in the past, he's been really good. But for every really good Rob Thomson postseason moment, it feels like there's multiple really bad ones. And that's a guy that not only are you bringing back for this next year, you're looking to extend again? So I already know Phillies fans are going to be upset with that because there's a large portion of this fan base that was calling for Rob Thomson's job this season when the Phillies in the regular season were winning. There are going to be a lot of people who are unhappy when that news comes down about him getting an extension. I was already unsure if I wanted him back, much less 2 more years. All right, we'll cross that bridge when the extension news comes out. But that was shocking to me. Something else that completely floored me. No changes to the coaching staff. Kevin Long, still here. Caleb Cotham, still here. Paco Figueroa, still here. Dusty Watson, still here. Mike Calitri getting promoted to a field manager position that they're creating. So there will be an addition, and they'll get a bench coach and get a new voice in there. But the fact that you came out of that postseason result after what happened against the Mets last year, and there's not a single coach losing their job. I'm not Mr. Come on here and call for people's job, right? If you watched any Locked On Phillies, if you listened to any Locked On Phillies, you know that I'm not the fire this guy should be gone type of guy, unless it's very warranted. Jordan Romano was one of those instances, right? Like, or it was so obvious he had no place on this team with his performance. But like, you got to push me pretty far to get to that point. I'd say the last couple postseason appearances should have pushed Dave Dombrowski and John Middleton far enough to make some change with the coaching staff. And they're not doing that. That's insane to me. I don't know where you look at what's happened the past couple of years and say, we're running it back with the coaching staff. I don't understand it. If you're mad about that, jump in line, because I'm not happy either. I need a change for change's sake. Maybe that makes me rash. Maybe that makes me hasty, stupid, whatever word you want to use for it, if you're pro keeping all of these coaches. But man, we're at the point where we need to do something different. And maybe it seems rash in the moment, but change for change's sake is what this team needs, at least in my opinion. Now, let's get into some of the stuff that we heard about the roster from Dave Dombrowski, because he did talk about it. Now, there were certain questions that he did not answer, and he didn't give any specifics because, as he mentioned at one point, I don't want to put this out there so that other people know what our plan is, right? He legitimately said that almost word for word. So it's inference, right? It's not like Dave Dombrowski came out and said, this guy's gone, this guy's gone, this guy's gone, we're attacking this free agent, we're moving this position, we're changing this, that, the other thing. But you can infer a couple of things. First and foremost, he was asked by Tim Kelly, who covers the Phillies for On Pattison, does a great job. What's up with Nick Castellanos? He had the frustrations with Rob Thomson and just overall frustrated throughout this season. Like, can you go through another year with Nick Castellanos on this baseball team? And Dave Dombrowski said, we'll see. And he also said, your assessment is accurate. Basically, yeah, there were issues. There were issues between Rob Thomson and Nick Castellanos this year. And the we'll see is just a fine way of saying he's pretty much gone. Nick Castellanos has probably played his last game as a member of the Philadelphia Phillies. That situation seems untenable. And without telling you, Dave Dombrowski pretty much told you that. So you eat some of that contract, final year of his deal. You move on from Nick Castellanos. There's a new right fielder in Philadelphia. You kind of already had the feeling that was coming. He also said with Max Kepler, I'd be surprised if Max Kepler, or I don't expect Kepler to be back, might have been his wording. Like, it's not likely he'll be back. I forget the exact wording he used, but basically, for some folks that were free agents, like Kyle Schwarber, for example, he said, we would love to have him back. He knows that. We've talked with his representation. That was his reaction when asked about Kyle Schwarber. So he will say, hey, we want him to be a part of this team. He pretty much said the opposite with Max Kepler. So Kepler going to be gone. I feel very comfortable in saying your corner outfielders are both going to be off this team. So what does that leave you with? Harrison Bader. Dombrowski was non-committal. Got to see what happens with free agency. Doesn't sound like the mutual option is going to happen between Bader and the Phillies, right? So the outfield could be entirely different. Justin Crawford was mentioned a couple of times. They'd like to see him come up. Clearly, he's going to be a part of this team's plans next year, unless something goes horribly wrong for him in spring training from a performance standpoint. Let's move to the pitching staff. Sounds like Ranger's going to be gone, right? There wasn't any strong commitment to bringing Ranger back because, as Dave Dombrowski was listing out, good pitching. He went through and said, healthy Wheeler, healthy Christopher Sanchez, healthy Luzardo, healthy Nola, add Andrew Painter to the mix. Like, Ranger Suarez not mentioned there. Kind of tells you what you should have already known, that he's on his way out. There was a real interesting discussion about Otto Kemp, where it seems like Dave Dombrowski really likes Otto Kemp as a potential everyday player in the future for this team, which I like Otto Kemp. I do. I don't see him as an everyday player. I see him as like a bench bat on a major league team right now. And maybe he has progression in him. But then you hear about Jose Alvarado, who has an option available. And Dave Dombrowski basically said, I'd be surprised if he's not back. So we're bringing Alvarado back. We're trying to re-sign Schwarber. Obviously, Turner or Harper will be here. Sounds like he wants to keep Stott. Talked about him and Sosa being some quasi-platoon. Harper's going to be here. Didn't really make too many comments on JT. but we know how the Phillies organization feels about JT. I mean, you brought back all the damn coaches. You're talking about how you believe in this core, how close you were to the Dodgers, which was one of the things he was pressed on by the media there. Basically, you keep bringing up 162, but you keep backsliding or staying stagnant in the postseason. How do you keep balancing out the regular season to matter if it doesn't matter come October? And he kept going back to the old bread and butter of, oh, I've been in the postseason so many times. I've only won it this many times, and all of these times we lost it when we had great teams, and the 2022 team wasn't as good as this team, and they did it. It's a crapshoot. All of this stuff. Like, I'll tell you, it's a crapshoot. Trying to get an answer about how this team is going to be improved. How are you getting better from this year to next year if your answer can't be, oh, well, our guys work hard and we have faith in our guys? Because that is the crutch of Dave Dombrowski. We were good in the regular season. We were close in the postseason. I trust our guys to work. That ain't good enough anymore. And there's a lot more about the way that Dave Dombrowski went against this presser where it felt to me, I got to be honest, right? And I have respect for Dave Dombrowski. He is a future Hall of Famer, and I'm not mad that he's still in charge of this organization, right? At least from the baseball operations side, right? So I'm not saying fire him and bring someone else in to give a better press conference. But there was this air of arrogance, of smugness. And I don't think it comes personally from Dave Dombrowski. I think it's an organizational thing where this Phillies organization, you could tell by the party line today from Dombrowski and Thomson, who we're going to talk about in a minute, they don't believe they're as far away as it seems they are pretty evidently to the fan base. Now, maybe we're all wrong, right? Maybe all the folks outside the building are wrong in our evaluation of this baseball team. But to look at that Dodgers series and be like, well, we were close to this great team, and I warned you earlier this week, you were going to hear it. It feels like they've buried their heads in the sand. They're willing to steer into the curve and say, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. Like, we don't care about getting older. We don't care about bringing back the same guys. We don't care about leaning on regular season success when postseason success hasn't been there. I am sticking to my guns till the bitter end. And the problem is, we might have just watched the bitter end a week ago when they lost to the Dodgers in Game 4. So where in the world does that leave us? We'll get to that later. But we've also got to talk about what Rob Thomson had to say, because he had one answer that, if Philadelphia sports history tells you anything, it was a terrible way to phrase a thought process. Some interesting stuff from Topper and some stuff that I didn't like from him as well, though I believe Dombrowski's presser was the much more egregiously tone deaf for where the fan base is at right now. We'll talk about Rob Thomson as we continue today's episode. Let's talk about FanDuel first, though, because the NFL season's rolling and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you're going to unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So there are some very, very interesting games coming up in Week 7 of the NFL. The Birds are heading to Minneapolis, take on the Vikes. That's a big-time game. Carson Wentz could be starting. You never know. If that's the case, maybe look at that game and take the under. But here's what you want to do with the $5 bet to win $300 in bonus bets. Take a safe, easy one. Something where the odds are so in your favor, it basically can't lose. The payout might be minimal, but with the promotion, if you're a new user, that $5 bet's going to get you $300 in bonus bets. And then you run through your Sunday slate. There's a lot of stuff on FanDuel Sportsbook. Props, parlays, futures, money line, spread, all kinds of stuff that you can combine into those parlays that we talked about. Payouts are quick and easy and safe, and the interface is awesome to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Rob Thomson, you're up next. And this is a little bit different than the Dave Dombrowski thing, because Dave Dombrowski does not get the benefit of the, well, what do you want him to say? Because I'm a big proponent of understanding what managers and coaches and players around sports can and cannot say in their own best interest. Sometimes the fan base would rather hear what they want to hear and watch the organization burn than hear the tactful answer and live to fight another day. Calling out a player seems ideal, especially for folks who remember the hard-nosed days of guys like Larry Boa. But at the end of the day, sometimes the diplomatic approach is the better one. For a manager, that might be required because Rob Thomson, retaining his job, is going to have to deal with a lot of these players day in and day out, right? Some will be gone. Some will be new players. But this core, some of the guys are locked in. And you don't want to come out and be like, yeah, Bryce sucked this year. He's terrible. JT, we don't want him back. You see how old that guy is? Schwarber, he's not worth the money he thinks he's got to get. Like, you can't do that. Now, where Dave Dombrowski comes under fire is, it's your show, buddy. You're president of baseball operations. There is no, oh, everybody come together, kumbaya, we got to get along with the players. No, you got to get results is what you got to get. So Rob Thomson is in a bit of a tougher spot because he's got to be in the locker room with the guys day in and day out. He's got to get the buy-in from these players. Like, you know how it is at your job. Think about your direct superior, the person that you report to and you work with every day versus, I don't know, the senior vice president of your entire department. If you don't see the person every day, it doesn't matter if you really like them or much, nor that or not, right? You just have to like the person you're working directly with, and sometimes that's enough motivation for people to work. So I say all that to say this. Rob Thomson had a lot less he had to say for me in this joint press conference because he's not really making the roster decision. He can go to Dave Dombrowski and be like, I'd like this, I'd like that. But at the end of the day, it's Dombrowski's show, and Rob Thomson is a subordinate to Dave Dombrowski. Doesn't mean that I liked what Rob Thomson had to say. Now, there's one thing that I'll always appreciate about Topper, and you heard it when he talked about talking to Orion Kirkring. You heard it when he talked about his relationship with Nick Castellanos. The Kirkring thing, he said he's been checking in with him since the play, making sure he's all right, like giving him everything he needs, whatever he needs to be in a good spot mentally right now, because it's a tough place for Orion Kirkring. Still, I'm sure we're only a week removed from the throw home. Don't get me started again. But I appreciate that. I appreciate when he was asked about Nick Castellanos and the president of baseball operations, Dave Dombrowski, basically spilled the beans of like, yeah, it's accurate they didn't get along this year, Topper and Casty. Rob Thomson was like, yeah, I mean, stuff happened over the course of the year. I don't hold a grudge. I never will. We settle things. We move on. That's just the kind of guy I will always be. And I respect the person he is. And a big part of being a manager over 162 games in a baseball season is the person you are and your ability to manage all these different personalities. Interpersonal relationships, nearly as important as baseball strategy. Notice I said nearly. It's not as important, but it's a big part of the equation. It doesn't get enough credit. But the one thing that I hated about Rob Thomson's media availability was he was asked about what he potentially needs to change in his managerial style or strategy to get better results in October. Basically, hey, what you're doing works in the regular season. It hasn't won you a championship in the postseason. What do you feel you need to change? Do you guys remember Ben Simmons when he was on his way out? Funny enough, I'm wearing my Sixers sweatshirt today if you're watching on the YouTube. And by the way, if you're watching on the YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Become one of our everydayers. Get locked in. Hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel. It'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted. It's free and easy to subscribe. And also, we're available wherever you get your podcasts. Any podcast place, anywhere you can find Locked On Phillies. Make sure you're rating and reviewing. But Ben Simmons, when he was in his spiral that led to him becoming one of the most hated figures in Philadelphia sports history, had a moment where he was asked about, after the Hawks game, the Hawks series where they blew a lead to the Atlanta Hawks. And if you don't, not a big basketball fan, they blew a game, right, in the postseason and lost the series. He basically said, we lost the game. I am who I am. It is what it is. And people hated that because it's such a deference of fault, right? It's such a, well, I can't change who I am. This is just reality. There's nothing I can do to alter this. It is the course of the universe because of who I am, and it'll never change. That's such, I don't want to say defeatist, but again, I'll say deference. You're pushing the onus of fixing things away from something you can personally do. And when Rob Thomson was asked that question, he said, I am who I am. Now, he gave a little bit more color before that to like his thoughts on the matter, but to end that answer with I am who I am, that's going to be played all over the place on Philadelphia Sports Talk throughout the offseason, throughout next season. Like, that is going to be the rallying cry for people who want Rob Thomson to not have this job. And frankly, I do not blame them, because that to me is such a, of all the things you could say, I'd love to look at how I manage the bullpen. Maybe there's more we can get out of that. I'd like to think about the makeup of the lineup if we keep a lot of these same players. Could we be getting more out of that? I'd like to think about the way that I manage the players throughout the season, the usage. If the roster continues to age, well, how do I infuse youth that could potentially be joining this team? All of these potential answers. And he instead basically went with, we get results in the regular season. I am who I am. It is what it is. The Ben Simmons line. I'm going to give you a little hint out there. If you ever find yourself in a position of prominence in Philadelphia sports, athlete, manager, GM, whatever, remember where you heard it, right here. The Ben Simmons line is never the line to take. And Rob Thomson took it. And there's a lot more that Rob Thomson talked about with the dynamic of the team moving forward and what he thinks about certain players. And he was politically correct in a lot of his answers, but there are some things that we can glean from various ways that he said things. And we'll dive deeper into all of this as the week wraps up and next week gets going and we dive into the offseason and start to figure out what in the world they can do. But I know the question that Phillies fans are thinking after this. Well, the president of baseball operations basically said we were close and we're going to continue to do the same thing. The manager echoed that to a lesser extent because he has less power over the matter, but he didn't seem too inclined to change things because of the result of this postseason. So Phillies fans right now are probably saying, why bother with this team? Why would I not be one of the wake me up when October comes people this year? The postseason is the only thing that matters. Why would I get excited over the regular season? I understand that sentiment. I have one singular path forward that could inspire confidence for the Phillies fan base, and I already don't think they're going to take it. But I'll tell you the only way out of the situation that they have built for themselves with the way that they handled that press conference today, and it's a long shot. We'll talk about it as we continue today's episode. Let's talk about Prize Picks first, though, because this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, and every day we make decisions. But on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections, like, let's say, Josh Allen's passing yards, or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown. Now, both of those players have been a little bit quiet lately. Josh Allen the past 2 games, Saquon Barkley pretty much the whole year. Might be a good time to load up on them for your Prize Picks picks. And why is Prize Picks the best? Well, one, I love how quick it is. You can put together a lineup in under a minute. The amount of time it takes you to hear me tell you about Prize Picks, that's how quickly you could put together a Prize Picks lineup of your own. And Prize Picks just added stacks. So if I want to ride with a player, I can select their pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns. Josh Allen, a great player for that. All in one lineup. And the new injury reboot feature means if your player leaves early and doesn't return, it won't count against you. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right. So where do we go from here? The logical place that Philadelphia Phillies fans end up after this press conference is they're running it back again. They're not changing enough. They're praying and hoping for a different result with the same process. This is the definition of insanity, and I refuse to let this team drag me into insanity. I think that's where a lot of Phillies fans are at right now. And I do not blame you one bit, because if this was not my professional career to talk about this baseball team day in and day out, I would be in that same headspace. But I have to examine all opportunities for the Philadelphia Phillies. I should say I get to examine all opportunities because it is fun in some ways to see it from this lens of like, okay, there's got to be something to make of this. And here is the one way out. There's only one way that you can avoid what it seems like the Phillies are heading towards. They ran it back with the coaching staff. So there is no scapegoat in the coaching staff where you could say, well, we changed the hitting coach. We have belief that we'll have a different approach next year with the big-time bats that we have in this lineup because Kevin Long isn't the guy. We changed, third base coach, Dusty Wathan, no longer with the team. Our base running is going to significantly improve. Through that, we'll create more runs. We will become more fundamentally sound. No, not happening. Hey, we're going to try and change some stuff about our lineup and the way that we have everything set up, and we're going to reset the way that we approach Phillies baseball. No, this wasn't a reset. This was a reaffirmation of the way that they already do things. And a little secret here, that way ain't working, folks. Or at least it hasn't worked the past 4 years, even though you've gotten close and then further and further and further away. So if you're not going to change the coaching staff and you want Kyle Schwarber back and you want JT Realmuto back and you'd be surprised if Jose Alvarado is not back. And that's 3 of your 5 free agents. And it sounds like Kepler and Ranger Suarez are gone. And then we'll see about Bader. There's one way. You got to go out and you've got to make some big time free agent impact moves at the positions you do have open. The one good thing out of today's press conference is it seems like the outfield is wide open. I don't know what the future holds for Brandon Marsh. Doesn't seem like the Phillies are very committal to him being like an everyday guy. I don't know if Bader's back. Center field's open. I think Nick Castellanos is gone. Pretty much everyone who watched that press conference today should think Nick Castellanos is gone. Right field is open. There's a chance all your outfield spots are open. Justin Crawford should take one of those. Do you go out and spend big? Do you get somebody to hold down the outfield like, I don't know, a Kyle Tucker, who the Cubs don't seem inclined to re-sign? If you heard Kyle Tucker's recent comments after their season ended, he sounded very much like he was not returning to Chicago. He'll be a free agent. What do you do as far as that's concerned? Like, there are some big name guys out there. Cody Bellinger could be another guy. Could Kyle Schwarber go to the outfield? I don't think so. I think if they re-sign him, he will be strictly DH, and I think that's smart. But, like, you got to swing for the fences in free agency, or you got to make a monster trade and clear some stuff up and then bring in even more guys. Like, Dave Dombrowski better wheel and deal his rear end off this offseason to make up for that strategy that we just heard in the press conference. The only problem is this. He said he expects the payroll to be in a similar spot to what it was this past year. You might say, well, okay, you move on from Bohm and you move Castellanos off the books and maybe you move Walker and then maybe, I don't know, you trade Brandon Marsh and you don't re-sign Kepler and maybe Schwarber comes back. But JT's back at less money. Same level, but more room to allocate that to other places. I'll tell you what. You know what the Dodgers did this past offseason? They went out and spent more money. You know what the Mets are going to do this offseason? They're going to go out and spend more money. You know what these other top markets, the Yankees, are going to do? They're going to go out and say, our payroll is increasing because we need to win. And the Phillies are telling you it's staying the same. So if you think there's this big-time home run move coming for the Philadelphia Phillies where they make a Trey Turner, Bryce Harper caliber move outside of re-signing Kyle Schwarber, of course, which would still be a big guy to bring back, but it wouldn't make this roster any different, I wouldn't hold your breath. Now, if Dave Dombrowski somehow pulls it off, he makes up for what he said today or what he didn't say today, however you want to look at it. But right now, if you had to ask me, are the Philadelphia Phillies running it back for 2026? It seems like they're running it back. And people hated that last year, and people hated it the year before last year. So, Phillies fans, you already don't like to take your medicine. Dave Dombrowski's trying to feed it to you for a third straight year. I wouldn't be happy about this. I mean, heck, I'm not happy about this. I just hope my evaluation of what their plan is wrong. There'll be plenty of time to break it down. But that's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you again so much for joining us. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that really helps us out. I'll talk to you tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.